Well, I was going to say also, we worked a lot together, but what I love about your records is that, just because we're friends doesn't mean you call me every time. You use Dan Dugmore.
Yep.
And
Casting.
you and I loved Strawberry Wine by Dina Carter. It
Yes.
was just like when that record came out, it's like, who is that? Of course, it was so animated and so soulful, and I love the fact that you've seen, like, you've used Bruce Boughton, I know for sure, and Travis Toy. I think you use a Rascal Flatts steel player, and you give that's an example of giving a new guy a break.
Yes.
And we've all been there. I've been the guy like, oh, I'd love to play on the artist records. I think I can do it, and so you've been really fair in your experimentation with players and throughout with all instruments, and I think that's really admirable, and that's what that's probably you searching for, also looking for just like a different take on something, and
probably twofold. I mean, it's as a producer, you're kind of asked. Excuse me. Your sole objective is to realize what the artist that hires you is trying to say. And you're also the liaison between that artist and that record company. They're trying to make money off the project too. So you're trying to balance that, right? And so, in sorts, you're kind of like the equivalent of a director for a movie.
Yeah. And
casting is key. And sometimes, I guess it would apply, the same principle. I mean, sometimes you cast for different reasons. There are parts that would be character parts that, you don't necessarily want the 6'5" guy with all the muscles. Sometimes you want the guy who's 5'3", and is wearing glasses or whatever, and that, because that fits the part. And you'd have a hard time selling the the uber athlete playing the the nerdy kid in school. It's the part. So to me that's the same thing. And you also. I thought when you brought up the other steel players, I think a key is that we all in the studio business we try to find our identity, but there is a certain skill set to also being able to articulate what somebody else does.
Yeah, that's important.
I mean, I remember when I moved back to Nashville, Brent Mason dominated the guitar sound of Nashville. And so if I was going to swim in that pool, I had to be able to at least try to kind of be in that lane a little bit too. Now I'm not the player that Brent Mason is in that way. There's not a chance in the world. But there were many times, I studied him, I listened to him all the time. And there were times that I did Brent Mason-esque stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was there, I got hired. Brent was probably busy, or whatever, or they wanted a different take on it. But the same is true. It's like there's been times where I've said to you, do it like so and so.
Oh yeah.
And that to me is for young players is something that is so important. Again, it's ego. I remember there was I did run into a superstar player on a different instrument.
Yeah.
And we ran into that same thing. There was a sound that I wanted, and I'd actually mentioned another player, another style, and that didn't sit well with that player. and this was a marvelous musician and a great person too.
Yeah.
But we had to part ways. I couldn't use him again.
Yeah.
Because it was his way or the highway, and he didn't understand. If I'm going to pay you this money to play on this record, your job is to. It's not to represent yourself. If you do that, you should go and record your own records.
That's correct.
So that's something that we all have to do. We all have to be aware of everything that's going on around us, and be willing. That's the key.
Well, I want to say that leads to a great insight. Okay, why? I understand what you're saying. I agree with that 100%. But the reason why the producer, if you were the guy that's bowing up a little bit, like I don't want to play like, in your mind, okay, I'm saying I don't want to imitate this guy.
Right.
So I'm bowing up. What I'm not privy to is the producer is the one guy in the whole room, not the artist, but he's the one privy to all the conversations before that session takes place.
Yeah.
He knows what the label wants. You know, you're asked to the whole process. So you're kind of directing everybody, and if you've got a guy that bows up, how complicated that makes the whole thing. It can spoil the whole session. It can just bring it down, and it's a wash. You know, I've known people that have said they had to recut songs because it just fell apart because of egos. Mm-hmm. So and that's not the reputation you would want. But explain that process, because you're dealing before we even walk in the room. You've had countless meetings with the artist and
Well, yeah, at that point the responsibility falls on the producer.
Yeah,
he's the one who's basically there to rally the whole thing together. And so it's bigger than it's bigger than anybody in the room.
Yeah,
and when there's that many personalities kind of floating around, you tend to gravitate towards the people who don't make that an issue. You know, and so in the way I always looked at it as a player, you know, if a producer hires me, right?
Yeah.
I'm sensitive to the whole situation. You're sensitive to everybody. So you're not you're not an island there. Certainly the artist.
Yeah.
But you also are very keen to watch the dynamic between the producer and the artist. You don't want to come off as a brown noser to one or the other.
Yeah.
And the same way too. If an artist, you know, and this has happened several times, an artist handpicks a musician that they would want. Well, you want to make sure as a musician that you're not so deferential to an artist that you leapfrog the producer, because there's going to be other sessions. I mean, you know, it's a business of relationships. Yeah. And you know, if you're a user personality, if you're just highlighting people and deciding, oh, this will get me to the next level, more than likely after a period of time you'll be found out. Yes. You know, it's just get along with people and try to bring the most to everybody. It's respect.
Yes.
I mean, these are simple things we learn in
it's common sense, but
common sense.
It's amazing how many people. I mean, I've done a very little production, but I've been in that situation. And it's amazing how when it starts to go wrong, and how many people, and you think, why don't you know this?
Yes.
But it's
and there's a lot of times too. I mean, the goal is you want to be asked back.
Yeah.
If you're getting into this, you would the dream is to be able to make your living playing your instrument, right? So sometimes, and we all felt this when we first got it, you should never feel guilty about feeling a certain way. I wanted to be a star. I wanted to wow people when I was young.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do.
Yeah.
Sometimes, though, you have to, if you can possibly imagine this, sometimes you're there and you may wow somebody by not wowing them. Yeah. You may wow a producer by them, I'm just looking at myself now, and I see people. I'm more impressed. I'll give an example. There was a situation where there was this was actually a drummer that came in, and it was I was recording a project, and there were certain musicians that were on the instruments. This was part of their project, right? And they weren't studio caliber. Yeah. But it's their project, and rightfully they should be playing their instruments. And my job as a producer is to take them over to the finish line. But it wasn't going to happen on the session because they didn't have the experience. But but that was the ticket. They were there. This was their project. So I was able to bring in a drummer because they didn't have a drummer. And I remember, the first several run-throughs were quite. They were awful. I mean, it was awful. The situation was awful. It was all over the map, and I'll never forget too, because I invited my son to the session. He's a really good musician, and he had
incredible player.
he had some headphones on, and I remember him. He had the smarts to not say anything, but I'll never forget him looking up, and I saw his face, and he was like, and it was like because he's like, what's going on here? Yeah. And like I said, luckily he didn't say, "Hey, Dad,"
Yeah, as kids can do.
Right. But the interesting thing was the drummer. It is poker playing. You would have never known that he wasn't in the studio with the most accomplished studio musicians. He was poker faced. Every take, he was right there. He never said one thing. He never let it be known that because it's a team thing. It's not it's not just about him. He had to integrate with these other folks, and it was sloppy. He played, did great, and he left that night. And I remember I called him up and I said, I just have to tell you how blown away I am, because I've experienced the opposite. I've experienced when things aren't right, and everybody's, we're all insecure. And if a band is not completely good, it kind of can take everybody down and make you feel like you're not doing a great job. Mm-hmm. And this guy, I'm sure he has all the same emotions, but he was such a pro, and he never degraded the other musicians. Yeah. He never let the producer know that this wasn't a day at the shop. Yeah. And I just remember calling him up and I said, I'm just utterly blown away by your professionalism. Mm-hmm. And he just, he said, thank you. And, as a result, I mean, I've called him on more records than I can tell you, because he's that good. Yeah. So, it's true about everything. So,
oh, yeah. I have one other question, and it's just about your personal guitar playing. And one of the things that I'm teaching here, I'm really trying to drive home the point of, it's like using a football analogy, but it's like you as an 8-year-old, you learn the game, and what do you practice? How to throw the ball, how to tackle, how to run, and you do all this. You go to high school, what do you play? You practice the same things over and over. And then you get into college, same thing. And it's all to get you to the point of muscle memory, where everything is just a total response. Mm-hmm. And it's the little things. It's not like, hey, I play this complicated song, because that's not going to get you there. And then when you finally get to the NFL and you've signed $1 million contracts, you're still practicing how to throw the ball, how to catch, how to fall and catch, and all the things, and it never changes from day one to the end of your career. You're always practicing. I was going to say, do you find yourself doing that with the guitar? Because Dan, when you check them out, like those hot solos at the end when Mark O'Connor, I can't remember the record with Clint Black, where he had you guys just trade off and you played that blistering. I mean, it was about as fast as anything's ever been played on a country record, and because you're trading off, and Mark O'Connor's like shooting lightning bolts at you, I would imagine. And I mean, that's the ultimate technique on guitar, but yet, I mean, that's not what you sit around. I wouldn't guess that's what you sit around and work on. What do you? Well,
when I was young, I did. I probably drove everybody crazy, but no, I mean, fine tuning the fundamentals, especially in the context of getting hired in a commercial context. I mean, again, it's like if you choose to go down the road of being an artist and playing a certain kind of music, then that's what you should do. Yeah. And if that's what I just went and heard that band called the Animals as Leaders.
Oh yeah. Insane.
Yeah. That is insane. But those fundamentals you're talking about, I mean,
tone, attack,
touch, all nuances, all those. It's not everybody's created equal. I mean, you go like if you go on a piano, piano is an easy one to use as a standard. An acoustic piano, you can have 10 different great piano players sit on the piano, and it sounds different every time.
I know.
And and with the nuance on the guitars, that we play, it's down to one note, plung, strum, dring. You could do that 100 different times, and it's different. I mean, it'll be different every time. It's not like a strum is a strum. It's not, because then when you put that in relationship to what the drummer, the bass player, the singer's doing, you have 100 different nuanced options of doing that. Yes. And so when you play the most seemingly simple lick, do do da da, right? Yeah. So public domain lick. You realize that playing that lick, you could do that lick when you were 10 years old. You first pick up your instrument. Yeah. And the question, I always had is like, how'd that guy get a gig?
Yeah.
I mean,
I can do that. I learned that years ago. Yeah.
right. First thing would be, how did he know when to play that lick?
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot to get you that table.
Yeah.
But there also is this thing that is, it's like I said, it's relational to the music, and there's a touch to make it sound important. And the best of the best never get bored with that nuance.
Yeah.
And that pursuit of the note.
Yeah.
And that's the endless beauty of playing music and playing an instrument. Guitars are great because it's never the same. You can play the same lick and it's never the same.
Never. Steel's the same way, and I'm
Right,
trying to drive that.
When I say
home.
guitars, I'm
We're both. We're
yeah,
brothers.
it's guitar. It's guitar,
Yeah, it's
and
just-
that's it.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I always took a little bit of issue with is when I was coming up, and I played way too many notes early on in my career. But that's
Me
what you
too.
do. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what you do. And you should.
Yeah.
And everybody should. But I'll add to that.